He decided to interrogate the most notorious drug lord,
Still gonna kill you.
but was unaware of the fact that the drug lord works as a frontman of CIA.
And Mr. Stigman's AWOL U.S. Navy.
So, CIA forced him to shot his best friend and made his life hell.
Your boss.
They all were controlling him till that one day. And on that day, he unveiled his devious plan to settle his scores with all. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The movie kicks off with two cops, Bobby and Stig, cruising in a black car. They're stuck at a train crossing, waiting for the world's slowest train to pass. As soon as the track's clear, Stig hits the gas like he's auditioning for the Fast and the Furious Cop Edition, and they head toward a small-town diner straight out of an old postcard. Once they park, Stig struts inside to grab some coffee while Bobby heads across the street to a bank, probably to check if his savings account is still a sad story. Stig's tapping his foot, getting a bit impatient because he's running on caffeine fumes, but Bobby's busy securing a safety deposit box, maybe stashing his secret donut fund. Eventually, Bobby joins Stig at the diner, and they immediately start arguing like an old married couple over what to order for breakfast. It's like watching two kids argue over the last slice of pizza. After some bickering, they finally settle on something, probably pancakes, because everyone knows pancakes solve all problems. When the waitress leaves, Bobby pulls out a piece of paper, flashing Stig details about the bank he just visited. Stig looks at it like Bobby just handed him a treasure map. After a quick chat, Stig decides it's time to add some excitement to their morning routine. He heads to the bathroom, whips out his lighter like he's about to start a rock concert, and triggers the fire alarm. The diner erupts into chaos as everyone scrambles outside. Stig leaves the bathroom and casually tosses the lighter onto the grill, sparking a real fire. As they stroll back to their car, Bobby and Stig debate how much to leave as a tip. Stig, being the generous soul he is, finally convinces Bobby to leave a bit more. Just as they're walking away, they hear the diner's windows shatter from the heat, but they don't even flinch. They've probably seen worse on a Monday. Leaving the diner behind, Bobby and Stig drive out of town, eventually pulling up to a ranch that screams shady business. Poppy, the boss, is waiting for Bobby in the stables, where all good business meetings happen. Bobby hands Poppy a bag full of passports like they're trading baseball cards. But instead of the cocaine they were supposed to exchange, Poppy hands Bobby a bag full of cash. Bobby's not having it. He hands the money back, saying, "Keep the passports, keep the cash, but don't forget you owe me a favor. And next time, I want the product, not Monopoly money." Poppy reluctantly agrees, and after a mutual nod of understanding, they head back to find Stig in the middle of an argument with one of the guys over a shooting game. Bobby steps in, warning Stig to cool it, and casually mentions the head-in-a-bag situation like it's just another day at the office. Stig, realizing it's time to make a dramatic exit, beats the guy at the game just to make a point and walks off, throwing a few insults over his shoulder. On their way back, Bobby and Stig run into some trouble at the border and get hauled off to the police station. The cops start grilling them like they're at a barbecue, but Bobby stays tight-lipped, waiting for his lawyer like he's in a TV drama. Meanwhile, Stig plays dumb, claiming he's never even heard of Poppy. Eventually, the officer questioning Bobby steps out, leaving him alone with Detective Jessup. Bobby fills Jessup in on the situation. He couldn't get the cocaine because Poppy decided to play dirty. Jessup's worried that Bobby's getting in too deep and considers pulling him out, but Bobby pleads for more time, saying he's worked too hard to quit now. It's like when you're halfway through a terrible movie, but you've already invested so much time that you just can't walk out. Reluctantly, Jessup agrees, giving Bobby 2 more weeks to catch Poppy. That night, Bobby ends up at Deb's place, his control officer, where they spend the night together, making sure to keep their relationship under wraps so it doesn't mess with the job. In a quiet moment, Bobby confesses to Deb that his informant in the crime family is dead and begs her not to tell Jessup. He then asks for her blessing to rob the bank where the informant's money is stashed, explaining that it could be the key to nailing Poppy. Deb's got her doubts, but in the end, she agrees to go along with Bobby's plan, probably because Bobby's puppy dog eyes are just too hard to resist. The next morning, Bobby heads over to Stig's place to let him know he's ready to hit the bank. Stig's so excited by Bobby's change of heart that he's practically bouncing off the walls. The following scenes rewind a bit, showing how they ended up burning down the diner. Bobby had convinced Stig that the cops would be too close for comfort if the diner, famous for its donuts, stayed open. Later that night, Bobby fills Deb in on the details of the operation, making sure she's ready to move when the time comes. Meanwhile, Stig's waiting on the side of the road, keeping an eye out for his Navy contact. What Bobby doesn't know is that Stig's got his own secret agenda. He's been sent by the Navy to take down Poppy. After his officer arrives and hands over the necessary weapons and gear, Stig gets a quick rundown of the plan and heads home to prepare. You can practically hear the Mission Impossible theme playing in the background. The next day, Bobby and Stig show up at the police station and lock all the officers in the cells before heading to the bay. They make sure everyone's on the floor before getting to work. Stig sets off an explosion in the safe, and when they open it, they're both stunned to find way more cash than they expected. It's like finding out your dollar store lottery ticket just won you $1 million. Feeling uneasy about their sudden fortune, they decide to take it all and hightail it out to the desert. Bobby's puzzled as to why Deb hasn't shown up with backup, but he keeps his mouth shut, maybe thinking she got stuck in traffic, or worse, a long line at the coffee shop. When they finally stop in the middle of nowhere, Bobby tries to take down Stig, but Stig's quicker and gets the drop on him, leaving Bobby with a nasty flesh wound. As Bobby lies on the ground, Stig notices a police badge in Bobby's hand and confronts him about it. Furious at being double-crossed, Stig ditches Bobby on the side of the road like yesterday's leftovers and drives off with all the cash. Stig heads straight to his commanding officer, Harold, and shows him the stacks of money he's just scored. Stig tries to get some answers about who the cash belongs to, but Harold's as tight-lipped as a clam, instead focusing on Bobby and why he's still breathing. Stig admits he didn't finish Bobby off, but assures Harold that his cover is intact and Bobby won't be able to track him down. Harold gives a nod, probably thinking good enough for government work. After packing the car full of cash, Stig starts feeling suspicious of Harold, like that moment when you know someone's eyeing the last slice of pizza. His instincts kick in, and sure enough, one of Harold's men tries sneaking up on him. But Stig's faster than you can lose Wi-Fi at a crowded party. He dodges the guy and speeds off with enough cash to make a millionaire jealous. Meanwhile, Bobby's stuck out in the desert, and he's finally found by two locals in a Rover. Bobby pulls a gun, kindly borrows their car, and heads back to town. His first stop? A sketchy vet who patches him up like a beat-up old car. Bandaged up and feeling slightly better, Bobby meets Deb to fill her in on the craziness. He tells her he's heading to Stig's place for a little chat with his old buddy. When Bobby gets to Stig's apartment, it's emptier than a coffee pot on Monday morning. He calls for Stig, but gets no answer. Then the phone rings. It's Stig, sounding as chill as a snowman. Turns out, Stig knew what was going on the whole time. While they're trying to figure out who's really in charge, some guys show up looking for Stig. Of course, Bobby gets dragged into the shootout, trying to survive like he's protecting the last slice of birthday cake. After the gunfight, Bobby manages to escape and heads to Jessup's place, but things get weird fast. The place is swarming with random guys. Bobby tries to fend them off, but then Earl shows up, the guy whose money Bobby and Stig stole, and goes full villain. He shoots Jessup and forces Bobby into a tense conversation. With a gun pointed at him, Earl demands Bobby spill the truth about the cash. Bobby, stubborn as ever, refuses to admit anything. Earl doesn't buy it though. He frames Bobby for Jessup's murder and threatens to send him to jail unless he hands over the money. Fuming, Bobby heads to Poppy's place, ready for answers. He pulls a gun on Poppy, demanding to know whose money they took. Before Poppy can even respond, Stig bursts in and snatches Poppy like he's a hot Black Friday deal. What follows is a car chase that's a mix of Fast and Furious and slapstick comedy. Bobby and Stig are beating each other up while trying not to crash. Eventually, they call a truce and decide to figure out why they're both being set up. They take Poppy to a secluded spot, more villain's hideout than romantic getaway, and tie him up for answers. Poppy finally cracks and admits the money belongs to the CIA. The feds were paying him to smuggle goods using his planes. And just when things couldn't get weirder, Deb shows up, revealing they've been hiding out in her garage the whole time. She's not exactly thrilled about it. Stig senses the awkwardness and steps out, but that's when his old Navy buddies storm in with guns blazing. In the chaos, Poppy makes a run for it and calls in reinforcements. As they're fleeing, Bobby grills Deb on how Poppy's men found them. But before she can explain, their car gets rammed like a shopping cart in a parking lot. Poppy's guys grab them and take them back to his ranch. Poppy isn't just out for revenge. He's adding a little torture to the mix, trying to force them to reveal the location of the money. Bobby and Stig stall by promising to retrieve the cash. That's when the CIA agent running the show makes his entrance. Poppy gives Bobby and Stig one last chance to get the money. Before sending them off, he shows them Deb now being held hostage. He threatens to kill her if they don't bring the money back in 24 hours, and even throws in the extra challenge of crossing the border with a bunch of illegal immigrants. Once they're back, Bobby and Stig steal a car, because why not? And start debating where the money could be. Bobby remembers seeing Deb at a hotel where Harold stashed the cash, so they head there. It's either a wild coincidence or the universe is messing. They break into a naval base so Stig can confront his general. But when Stig finally gets to the office, The general brushes him off and orders him to leave. While Stig deals with that mess, Bobby sneaks into Harold's office for a little chat. What he finds out hits him hard. Deb's been playing him all along, and she had the money. Furious, Bobby sets off an explosion as a distraction and escapes. He calls Poppy, who reminds him that time's running out. Then, in a cold twist, Poppy hands the phone to Deb, who tearfully apologizes before he shoots her. Devastated, Bobby meets up with Stig to break the news. Stig goes from annoyed to furious in seconds, swearing to get revenge. After parting ways, Bobby finds Deb's body at home. Heartbroken, he notices a ring on her finger that gives him a clue about the money's location. The next day, Stig sets up a standoff, calling in Poppy, Harold, and the CIA. He promises to hand over the money, but clearly has a plan. Just as everyone's ready to grab the cash, Bobby shows up and does something wild. He blows up all the money. The explosion sets off a massive shootout, with everyone thinking they're the next action hero. As the bad guys tear each other apart, Bobby and Stig pick them off. After taking down Harold and Earl, they leave the ranch. Before they go, Bobby gives Stig a little payback with a shot to the arm, just for laughs. A few days later, they're back at a diner, having breakfast like nothing happened. Bobby drops a hint that maybe, just maybe, he didn't blow up the real cash after all.